Right, okay, that seems to work. Right, those of you who are expecting another 5 minutes so they could go out and play computer games, got a nasty shock, because I do actually have a longer talk. That's why I've got slides. So if you want to escape, then I suggest you do so now, because otherwise I'll be raising you on the way out. Right, okay. So today I'm going to be outlining why the computer games industry needs computer games research. And this is mainly so that all you students here can feel wanted. Actually, you are wanted, so it's not really like I'm tricking you into thinking you're wanted. I'm just trying to let you know that you really are wanted. The game industry really does need people who have studied games, whether from its research or whether it's from a practical side. They do need people who know about games. The only problem is that not everybody, been eaten by me. Not everybody realises that games are important. When you do universities study computer games, there's a number of different constituencies that they have to address. So there's the computer games industry, who are obviously interested because these people are producing students. There's the government, because indirectly they decide whether you get money or not. There's academic disciplines, because computer games is one of many things that go on at universities, and how does it integrate in with them, they want to know. And then there's your own personal interests. You're studying games because you're interested in them, not just out of some abstract desire to create formal systems. Now, since I'm a trained lecturer, not actually trained in lecturing, but I'm trained, I'm going to go through these one by one, because that's what happens. Whenever you see one of these slides, you know, oh my God, he's going to go through them one by one. I am, yes. I'll start off a little bit cynical. Oh, this is a couple of bear cubs fighting. I've got teeth, you're going to get right in that one's neck. Anyway, the games industry traditionally views computer games courses at universities. I know there's a Swedish word for it that translates into high school or something, but I'm not going to attempt to pronounce it because I do draw a line at how much humour I want to put into a talk. Universities are generally regarded by the industry as training establishments. You want to work in our industry? Well, you better train your students to work in our industry. Oh no, we won't be giving you any money, or any tools, or any expertise, or any of our time. It's your job to produce our employees. Nothing to do with us. We'll tell you exactly what it is we want from you to come and work for us. We'll really resent it when you give us it, because we don't actually want that. What the computer games industry wants is geniuses. That's all they want. They don't care where they come from. So a computer games, if you go to a computer games developer and say, what do you want from your people? What they actually want to say is geniuses. Just send us geniuses, more geniuses. But they say, no, that's not how we work. We want like quality assurance, and examinations, and so on. So what do you really want? And then so the games company said, well, let's have people who can program and draw and ride ponies. They just come up with a list of things which the academics duly write down, take away, give the course, and then they come out to the computer games industry, and the computer game industry says, but these aren't geniuses. You've given us what we asked for. Okay, so the computer games industry and universities don't always see eye to eye, because they don't really trust each other. The next people are the governments. These are the ones who ultimately provide the funding, but also provide is it legal or not? Now, a lot of computer games research is prompted by government concerns, which is to say the concerns of newspapers, tabloid newspapers in the UK. There's probably only about 100 words they use, because most of the readers can't understand more than that. they're very sensationalist, and they just want to sell newspapers. Unfortunately, selling newspapers affects large numbers of people. Large numbers of people vote, therefore the government listens to what the newspapers say. All this research, all these articles, all to do with computer games, are on 3 subjects. Addiction. Are you addicted to computer games? Well, yeah, obviously you are, because you should be watching television like everybody else, but you're playing computer games. Violence. Computer games are violent, not like noble ancient sports such as boxing. Computer games, they make you go out and kill people on the street. It happens all the time. Only the other day somebody was killed when someone threw an Xbox 360 out of the window and it landed on a passerby. Children. We always want to help the children, because the children are going to be corrupted by these computer games. Not like if they were to read books or something, or to watch bad movies, but we don't let them watch bad movies. Well, why do you let them play computer games? If it says 18 on there, oh, we see Jimmy's actually quite good at playing computer games. He doesn't need to be 18, he can play them at age 12. He's pretty good, you know, he can move his hands. No. You see, when it says 18, what that means is the content is for people who should be 18 or over. It doesn't mean you have to be 18 in order to be good enough to play, because it's so complicated. Well, that's how people see it, who don't understand computer games. Lack of understanding of games is not regarded as an impediment in this. If you are an academic who wants to study games, then not actually understanding what you're studying is not an obstacle. It's something that you can proudly boast. Well, I don't play these games. Obviously, no, because I play them. That would make me a little better than a gamer. And the research will continue, because the government keeps saying, look, we want a study here that shows people are addicted to computer games. Every study comes out that shows they're not. Computer games don't make you addicted. So the government keeps having to pay until somebody's going to come up with the right answer. And somebody eventually will, because just through sheer statistical noise, eventually someone's going to come up with something which will show that out of these 32 people, actually more than half of them were addicted to games for certain definitions of the word addiction and game. Right, academia, this is the next area. Right, a lot of work in academia concerns serious games. See, games are cool and hip and trendy, whereas all other academic disciplines are mind-numbing stodge. So people have this great idea, hey, just a moment, why don't we combine games with education, or artificial intelligence, or psychology, or economics, whatever your other area is that's mind-numbing stodge. So if you combine games with the mind-numbing stodge, surely you'll get cool and hip and trendy mind-numbing stodge. If something's boring, then making it into a game makes it a boring game. If something's fun, well, why do you want a game? There are ways that you can make games less stodged than, and still be fun, which I'll perhaps come to later in the talk. But the trouble is that people who are creating these games are... See, when I was an undergraduate, this is how it worked. The mathematicians looked down on the physicists, because the physicists, they were doing real world stuff. It wasn't ethereal, you know, it wasn't blue sky thinking, it wasn't abstract. They were nailed down to physics. And the physicists, they always looked down on the computer programmers. Because computer programming, I mean, you're just controlling one kind of thing, a little machine. It's not like the whole world, the whole universe. It's just this machine. And the computer scientists are looking down on the people who are studying artificial intelligence, which is what I did my PhD in. And they'd say, you're not doing, there's no formal methods there. You're just sitting there writing things between brackets. I used to use Lisp when I was an undergraduate. And that's nothing, you're nobodies. And it wasn't until computer games came along that the AI people could suddenly say, look at you little nonsense people, we're doing a proper subject here. You're doing this little entertainment stuff. People only play your games because they're fun, they're not in any way a challenge. If they were challenging, then perhaps you've got a real subject, but you haven't, have you? And the computer games people are, oh man, what are we going to look down at? The arts? So there's nothing. We are at the bottom of the pile, and it's been like that for some time. But things are changing. The final reason why you would be interested in doing game research is your own interests. Why are you here studying computer games? Well, that's because you like games. You yourself have a dozen explanations as to why this isn't true. Oh, I fancy a career in the games. I want to change the world by writing games. I think that this is a new developing subject area with many interesting applications. They're all lies. You like games. That's why you're doing them, because you like games. You love them. If you don't love them, you shouldn't be doing it right now. In fact, I'm looking around to see if anybody's got their little laptops open playing World of Warcraft while I'm speaking, which has happened in the past. Games are fun. You see, this is the problem people have, this guilt. Games are fun, and therefore they're shameful, because why should I be doing anything as a career which is actually enjoyable? Surely the whole point of work is that I do something dreadful so that the games are so much better when I get home, by comparison with what I've been doing. Because games aren't serious. Even serious games aren't serious. Some of them aren't even games. If you say you like games, then to the outside world, this is somebody who's saying, yeah, I'm a criminologist, love crime, me. Go out breaking the banks, take money all the time, yeah, love it. So the people regard it like this. You like games, do you? That's like, yeah, I play the old game. Oh, you do you? Yeah, you like them? Kind of, yeah, they're kind of fun, you know. I should spit on it. So this is the attitude. So people will try to excuse the fact that they're studying games because they like them and come up with other reasons why they would like to study games. Oh, it's a new area, I'm expanding a new career. It means I get to live in Visby. Visby's on my list of places I've always wanted to visit, on account of a game I played in about 1992 called The Patrician, which is a Hanseatic Trading League game, which, when you started off, there was about 20 different places you could start off, and I thought, oh, I'll pick this one here, at random, Visby. Oh, what a losing decision that was. It's great if you want sheep and pottery, not great if you want everything else. But nevertheless, following that, I developed an interest in it. So I was actually really pleased to come here to Visby. That's just an aside. Okay, so I've just given you a few stereotypes there. Fortunately, things are changing because computer games are growing up, and the reason they're growing up is because the players are growing up. Many of the problems that games had stemmed from feelings of inferiority with other media, like literature and film and theatre, but these in themselves have had problems in the past. But now games are acquiring legitimacy because people are finally seeing that actually these games are interesting. You get the people who are in their 30s who grew up playing computer games. In the same way as in the 70s we had people complaining about the terrible things that went on television, showing too much of this violence and so on, it'll turn us, the whole world into a permissive society and we'll all be going. Actually, judging by what I saw on Swedish television last night, there's some way to go in Britain yet in that regard. But let's just say YouTube would ban that material. But games are now, because the people who played them are getting older and getting into positions where they themselves are able to make decisions, and they know that things about games which people in the past didn't know because they never played them, things are now changing. What the hell?
Oh, Windows.
God. Go away. Right. Oh, this is a vase. This is Artemis. This is Actaeon. This is an ancient Greek myth. Actaeon's a hunter. He's going out hunting and he comes across this glade. He's hunting with his dogs. He's following this stag. And the stag runs into this glade. So he rides ahead of his dogs, going after this stag. doesn't see the stag, but he comes across this pool, and around the pool is Artemis, the goddess of hunters. She is his goddess, and she's there, naked with all her nymphs. Now you see, if he was a real hunter, what he should have said is, "Did you see a stag go by here?" But no, he didn't. What he said was, "Good, naked goddess." So he kind of didn't live up to Artemis's ideals of what a hunter is. So she turned him into a stag, and then the dogs came along and tore him to pieces. And that's what's happening here, he's being torn to pieces. The other side of this is not suitable for work. It's a shepherd boy being pursued by Pan, who has really got it on for the shepherd boy. Oh, this is a painting. Ophelia. Look at the painting there, the wrist, the refraction there. The model nearly died. It was painted in a bath. The bath was warm to start with, but the artist kept painting and painting, and after 4 hours she was almost getting pneumonia. So, anyway, the way the games industry, it needs games research, and it knows it needs games research. And because it lives permanently in crunch, it can't actually pay to its own people to do research, so it wants it to go on and just tell us the answers. A lot of it's on the technical side, but not just on the technical side. Partly, the technical side doesn't like research because they like reinventing the wheel. Lots of people like to create things which are fun and interesting, like new graphics engines. Obviously, they never want to write databases, but graphics engines, yeah, they always go for those. Designers want research on games as games. They want to know what a game, not so much games as constituents for economic systems, they want to know games as games. What is it about a game? Why do people play these things? How can more people play them? What is it that makes this game better than that game? These are the kind of things that designers want to know, want to talk about, because it lets them speak about what they want to do. Here's an example. My own field is what? Well, I'm interested in the kind of thing that is exemplified by these. World of Warcraft, Second Life, EVE Online, Landamu, Club Penguin, Age of Conan, Lineage 2, Maple Story, and about 2,000 other things. That's the area that I'm interested in. But what's it called? Well, in the past they were called MUDs, then they were called mugs, and then they were called new stars with a star, because that's the Unix format, which is anything. Then we split them into graphical MUDs and text MUDs, and then they became virtual worlds, but because the social world people all called theirs virtual worlds, and we call them MMORPGs for the game worlds, but the trouble with that is that if you create an acronym that's so long it needs to be shortened to MMO, people will do that, but then MMO would apply to things which are massively multiplayer but not virtual world. These are things which it's very hard for people to discuss, because in some way these are all the same. But every time you try to describe them, unless there's some formal methods, it's very difficult to colour it. They're split up. There are some game worlds in there. Lineage is a game world, and World of Warcraft is a game world for a bit longer. Social worlds, Landamu was a social world, a text-based one, Second Life. Some of them are 3D, some of them are 2.5D, some of them are 2D, some of them are text. There's lots of different ways of splitting them up, but there's no formal method. There isn't even mathematics for gameplay. Why haven't we got, if you go online and try and find denutational semantics of chess, you won't find one, because nobody's bothered to do it. I offered to pay my the semantics expert at my university £200 to create a denotational semantics for chess. Actually, I didn't know. I said Frogger. I gave him the description of Frogger. I said, do Frogger, that's easier than chess. And he still wouldn't do it. Not because he couldn't, just because what would it do to his reputation? So without any vocabulary, if you don't have the vocabulary, there's nothing, you can't talk about things that you might want to talk about. Designers want to talk about things. They want to be able to talk to each other and have words that will describe things. Even simple words like, we didn't used to have words like achiever. Now we do have words like achiever, mainly because someone wrote a paper in 1996, I think I did it, that introduced it. But prior to that, people didn't have ways of discussing things. And until we've got research and until we've got formalisms and ways to describe things, designers are having to discuss that each time they talk to somebody, they have to situate themselves within what they're doing. It's very difficult. So the game industry does actually need game design in the same way that the film industry benefits from film courses. There's another thing I do with games which is a bit different to how industries normally work. Literature. Here's how literature normally works. An author writes a book, literary novel. The academic will read the novel and interpret what the novelist is saying. That's literature studies. Here's what happens in games. Game designers, they design the games are developed, created. The academics will read the games and interpret what the designer is saying. However, then the designer will read what the academic said and incorporate it into their games, which is horrific news if you're a media studies person, because it means that what you say is actually affecting what you're studying. There's a feedback loop. It's terrible. And so people will do things, they'll read a design and say, well, this obviously uses the hero's journey. There's a series of events that follows a particular narrative thread, an example of which is Actaeon and Artemis. That's straight out of the hero's journey. There's a point in there called Meeting with the Goddess, where you're exposed to the hero is exposed to the full extent of the goddess's knowledge. The goddess represents everything that the hero should know. If the hero's up to it, then he passes the test. If he isn't up to it, he fails it, gets eaten by the dogs. That is an example of something out of the hero's journey. If you saw that in a game, and you were a traditional media studies person, then you would feel quite proud of saying, this game follows the hero's journey. And then you'd feel really stupid if the game designer said, well, yeah, I put that in. I know about the hero's journey. Of course I do. Everybody knows about it, don't they? Game designers are a bit different to normal people. They read up all sorts of things, many things, across different ranges. And they do it not because they want to learn how to create games and feel that they really should read up about pyramids or whatever. They do it just because they're interested. When I was, about 3 years ago, my best student I ever had, well, so far, came up to me during the middle of the period just before the exams and said, I'm not going to pass my undergraduate degree here because I'm supposed to be revising and I've just spent 3 days looking into the inner workings of the Palestinian Liberation Organization in the 1970s. Now, I'm Greek. I'm not interested in the Palestinian Liberation. Why did I do that? Why have I just wasted 3 days of my life at a critical period reading up on that? How can I be a game designer when I do that? And I said, well, when I was writing my PhD, 4 weeks before I had to hand it in, I spent a week researching pagodas. I've no idea why, but it was something that just happened to really interest me all of a sudden. So I researched pagodas. I know all sorts of things about pagodas. You know, like the odd number of floors. Did you know that pagodas always have an odd number of floors? I do, because I wasted some of my PhD time looking it up. And that's how games designers do. They will they'll learn a little about an awful lot of things. That includes things that people have written about them. Now, whereas an author tries to avoid being polluted by what the critics think, the game designers are more like, bring it on. Show us what you think, and then, well, if I like it, then, hey, I'll just steal just like anybody else does. Most game designs are stolen from other games. So it is different, but it's different in ways that we can't really exploit it because we don't have the research, we don't have the people working there. It will come. Oh yes, the government. Always have a downer on games. Games are now the topic of intergovernmental conferences. Council of Europe, OECD, Organisation of Economic Cooperation and Development, Internet Governance Forum. These are all ones which games have been discussed at. I've been at some of them. And the problem that governments have is that they can't drone on perpetually, always about addiction and violence and children, when they're negotiating regulations about intellectual property, about tax laws, and about freedom of speech. It's suddenly, whoa, just a moment, you mean there's more to games than these? Yes, and you actually now have to make a decision. You have to decide, are you going to tax how much it costs? If I buy something in World of Warcraft for 300 gold pieces, am I going to get taxed on that real money? Well, why would I? Because the 300 gold pieces can be sold on the internet for, I don't know, $5. Therefore, what I've just bought is actually worth $5. If I bought something in real life for $5, I would get taxed on those $5. So therefore, I should be taxed on my World of Warcraft. Now, that's one argument. Another argument is, if I go into a casino, win $1 million, and then lose $1 million, I come out and I don't have to have paid tax on the $1 million I won because I just lost it. It's only when you come out of the casino you pay the tax. So that would be another way of looking at it. But if the governments haven't looked at this area because they're so desperate to try and stop or pander to what the newspapers are saying, then they're not going to be able to say anything coherent about it. So we need people at universities who are able to talk about this. Developers can advise on it, but they can be very short term. They'll say what they want right now. Right now we want tax breaks. Give us tax breaks, tax breaks, tax breaks. Give us the tax breaks. Breaks, please, of tax. But they won't be able, they wouldn't know anything about intellectual property. They were thinking, well, what do I want? Their lawyers would be, well, we'll tell you what you want, but it will cost you an awful lot. Academics can talk about these things. They have done, and they are indeed doing so. So another area where academics can be useful is in dealing with the real world. They act as a buffer between the industry and the real world. Serious games. This is my picture of refraction. You may notice I can't draw. If I wanted to demonstrate refraction, I wouldn't actually draw this picture. Well, I would, but no one would know what I said. Because I can't draw. Now, if I was to wanted to teach somebody something using a picture and I can't draw, really I should get an artist in. Somebody who can draw. If I wanted to teach using a game and I can't design, I should get a designer. That's what should be happening. People who want to create serious games who aren't designers should admit the fact they're not designers and get somebody who is a designer to design their games. It shouldn't be well, anybody can sing. I've been to a karaoke bar, I can sing. Well, yeah, no one's going to buy your records, aren't they? People only laugh at you because you were drunk and you weren't very good. Now, if you're going to design computer games because you think that, in order to make a game, something into a computer game, you add points and a high score list, well, no, that isn't what you make computer games out of. You need to get somebody who knows what game design is if you want them to if you want a game designed and you don't know how to design them. For educational games, you need people who understand both education and games. Not somebody who knows an awful lot about education or an awful lot about some particular subject area, but nothing about games, because how hard can that be? Educators would laugh if you as a game designer were to come up with an educational game that used some ridiculous, naive pedagogy. I will teach you Chinese by making you shoot Chinese characters. They're not real people, I mean the actual letters. And then after you've shot 50 of them, then by God you're going to know what the Chinese for raccoon is. Well, yeah, they would laugh at that. What are you trying to do? That's stupid, that's repetitive. People aren't going to learn that way. They would laugh at a game designer who didn't understand education. But then they don't understand why game designers laugh at them for their feeble, naive, about as useful as knots and crosses or tic-tac-toe, whatever, I don't know what the word is in Sweden, it's probably tic-tac crosses or something. Then game design is an art in the same way as drawing is an art. And if you want to do it, you've got to have somebody who can do it. So now, some educators are getting designers involved in serious games, and this is how it should be. You should be getting people who know about games involved in the game design, because otherwise you're back in the Middle Ages where you've had this great idea for a novel and they're saying, no, you can't write a novel, you've got to write a Bible. But these words I'm writing down, I could put them in a different order and I could tell the story, no. You've got to use something there that could be a prayer book or a hymn book or something useful, not this entertainment. And this is what we're like here now. It's games are like books where you're only allowed to write textbooks, not allowed to write novels. Oh, this is Mount Bartle Frere. It's in Australia. Right, now your own interests. You're interested in games. Why is it okay to study them? You wanted to study games and your parents said, you can't study games, you should go and do something where you can get a professional career. Psychology, hairdressing. Why is it okay to study games? Well, it's more than okay, it's absolutely terrific. Games is fantastic to study. Wow! You should be proud that you're able to study games, not scared that your parents are going to think that you've picked the wrong subject area. What do they know? Other than sex, obviously, because that's how you came about. But beyond that, playing games is one of the most important things that human beings do. Do it all the time. And it's very important. And it's not some kind of new thing that's only just come along now. You can't say that games are some new cultural artifact. Games are old, they are very old, they're older than anything else that humans regard as an art. Anything. Animals play games, they don't write literature. Those bears I showed you a picture of at the beginning, they were fighting, they were playing a game. Bears don't write books. Well, Yogi Bear, obviously. But they don't write books. But they play games. So in your face literature, we're older than you are, you can't come, us waving your snobby little, well, Homer wrote books. Yeah, well, Homer wasn't a gorilla. Gorillas play games, not very sophisticated ones. It's only with the advent of computers that the significance of games has gradually become recognised. So only now are people thinking, well, because games are making pots of money, other than the games like soccer that were making pots of money before, but we didn't really want to call them games because we needed some other reason for them to be socially acceptable. They keep you fit and healthy, should you get kicked in the shins. So it's only recently that games has become recognised for being as important as they are. They're still not really as recognised as important as they should be. But because of this, we've got something which has been going on for millennia, which is only just now is the door being opened to this vast unexplored area. It's as if you've landed on some new continent that nobody's been there before. It's a few lonesome mountain men. And then you get to decide where to go. You're the pioneers. You get to open it up because you're here right now at the right time. You go out there, you see the mountain, you say, that's kind of a cool mountain. I'm going to call that Mount Bartle Frere. course, my name is Bartle Frere. My name is Bartle Frere. I only know about him because I kept looking my name up on the internet. This damn guy came up all the time, naming mountains after himself. You get to name things after yourself. You get to come up with techniques. You get to come up and invent new game forms. It's great. I've done it. Wonderful. Get invited to Visby on the strength of having invented virtual worlds 32 years ago. But what you're doing, it could be anything. You're in a new area. All you're doing at the moment is streaming out, looking for somewhere to pitch your little gold panning tent and find something which is going to make a change to the world. And even if you're not developing the games themselves, even if you're purely on the academic side of things, you still get to change the world because the designers will listen. They'll hear what you say, they'll think, that's good, I'll put that in. So even the people who aren't strictly into development, who aren't here to program or to animate or whatever, even they still get to open up these new areas. I remember Edgar Dijkstra coming to give a talk at the University of Essex once. He fell off the stage actually, he completely ignored, didn't notice that there was an edge there. That's why I'm doing it here. But he was complaining that Boole, George Boole, after whom Boolean logic was named, had life easy because he only had to invent true and false, and he got this whole logic system named after him. This is the guy after whom Dijkstra's easy, stupidly obvious method for searching graphs was named. Oh, that was a bit much there, Dijkstra. I'm glad he fell off the stage. But for you, it's a new terrain, but it's vast because it's so old and ancient and unexplored, and you get to do it. So, don't worry, I'll let you out now for this. Now is a marvellous time to be studying computer games for whatever reason. The old walls that stopped us from playing them, the people in the past who were anti-games, they're all dying. Yeah. Give it another 20 years, Prime Minister will have played games in his or her youth. You get to reveal what's behind the walls. You get to be the first to understand them, you get to be the first to name them. You get to be the pioneers. But most of all, the best thing is, you're going to get to play the better games that will come out of it. Which, sadly for me, because I'll be dead by then, I won't. But hey. Okay, that's that. Was there any questions, or you really want to get out there and play those games? Yeah?
Do you see any possible connections between commercial market research on games and academic university research on games?
I see a theoretical connection. In practice, okay, here's a cynical view again. The people who do commercial research into games do so in order to sell reports at $2,000 each to startup companies who wish to put in their business plans that their game will make them so many millions a year. In practice, academic research into games uses sample sets so small that you may as well go and throw a stone in the street, hit a random stranger and ask them, and your answer is just as good. What we need is better funded academic research, or larger sample sets on the academic side. There are some people who have got the numbers. The computer games, Sony Online Entertainment handed over terabytes of data on EverQuest 2 to a bunch of researchers in Stanford, Zero Park. And that is producing phenomenally good results. The people in the industry, the games research industry, they don't tend to have enough people, and what happens is that when they go to companies and ask them, the companies lie to them. So unless you've got some other way of verifying it, then their data, while factually based, is based on facts that people want them to hear. So neither of them is great at the moment, but it's early days yet. I don't see this as being a long-term problem. Yeah.
So I'm thinking for programmers, there's like an old tradition that they follow academia and they'll use the latest algorithms and graphics and so on. But I don't think I see a lot of designers really following up on academic theory or giving input back.
Okay, well here's the secret about computer game designers. Most of them aren't actually computer game designers. The better designers will indeed know about. He knows vast amounts because he does read vast amounts of papers. They will look at Digger, look down the list and say, oh, that sounds interesting, I'll read that. Programmers are interested in things technically. The problem for programmers in the games industry is that why would they want to be games programmers? Because if you're good at programming, it doesn't matter what you program. If you like programming, if programming is what stimulates you intellectually, why would you be a games programmer? You could earn 3 times as much programming for a bank, or for an airline, or for a washing machine company. Why would you want to be a games programmer? So all of you out there who are programmers for games, you should be asking yourself, why do I want to program games? Because it's not as if I'm going to be programming a game that someone's actually going to play, because what's going to happen is you're going to be programming part of a tool which someone is going to use to make part of a game which may or may not make it to be played. That's what you'll be doing. 10 years later, you might be writing a component of the AI which drives the game. Well done you. You probably will actually be getting paid a lot if you can do that. But why is it you want to be a games programmer? Now the answer I would suggest is because if you're programming games, then at least you're programming something that's never been played before, that's been programmed before. You're programming at the cutting edge. You would have been a regular programmer back in the 1970s when we didn't have libraries, we didn't have software development kits, we didn't have all the tools ready-made, and your job wasn't merely taking a bit of this, bit of this, bit of this, and sewing them together to make a program, which is what tends to happen in industry now. Back in the day, you had to do things from scratch. Nowadays, you don't have to do it from scratch because, yeah, programming graphics engines is fun, but by the time you've finished, the technology's moved on. So you start from a higher point, but nevertheless, you're programming things that have never been done before. You've actually got that creativity being used. It's not a puzzle-solving exercise, which is what regular programming is. It's actually a creative exercise. So that's why the games industry seems to attract maverick-style, brilliant programmers who don't really like working with other programmers, but they will because that's what it takes. But they're really individualists. Whenever you speak to the industry, they always say, we want people who can work in a team. Yeah, you do want people who work in a team, but actually what you want a genius is who can work in a team, and they're working in a team despite the fact they're a genius, not because they're a genius at working in a team. That's what you want. The way I would see it is, yeah, better designers will indeed be reading around things, and if they aren't, then they're probably the kind of designer who, journeyman designers, that kind of level where, yeah, they can do things or produce it and it'll be safe and so on, but no one's going to play their game and read it as a top designer isn't going to look at their designs and say, that is beautiful, I wish I'd done that, or that is fantastic, you see what they did there, what's happening, what's going on here, the way this and this work like this. That if the top designers can say that, then you've got a top designer. But most designers aren't like that. they've come into it from a different area, and not all of them even come from programming. They come from places like fine arts and so on, and they're mainly employed for their ability to write design documents, not for their ability to design. That's why if you wanted to get a job as a designer, just make sure you can write very good, very long, mistake-free articles. Well, not have to be mistake-free, but long documents. That's pretty much what they spend most of their time doing. Sorry, you did answer. Yes?
I'm a lawyer and I know a lot about freedom of speech, and now I have questions. Ever since Aristotle, there has always been an idea about human rights in Western civilization.
Yeah.
And if I tell you I would like to study human rights in, for example, World of Warcraft, that's here.
Yeah.
Would that be a good idea, you think?
Well, interestingly, law is one of these areas where virtual worlds, my particular field, is actually breaking new ground, where you can go there and there are things there which haven't been covered before in the 1600s. It is actually new territory for lawyers. There is quite a lot of work in that, trying to uncover what's important in those areas. When I say quite a lot, there's maybe 20 serious papers in that area that you want to describe. Part of the reason for that is that a lot of this work's done in America, and they aren't so big on human rights as we are in Europe. They've got different definitions. They're very big on freedom of speech, but for virtual worlds there's a problem between the freedom of speech of the players, the freedom of speech of the developers, and the freedom of speech of the other players. So there are arguments like, should I be able to go into World of Warcraft and say, vote Democrat? On the grounds that if people are spending all their time in World of Warcraft, then they're not being exposed to the normal television adverts, so I should be able to go to World of Warcraft and say, vote Democrat. The counter to that is, hold on, people go into World of Warcraft so they don't have to listen to people telling them what to vote. When we sign up to play a role-playing game, if there were Democrats in World of Warcraft, then perhaps yes, I might vote for the World of Warcraft Democrats, but there aren't. In fact, most of them are absolute rednecks, from what I've gathered. But there are concerns around there. I mean, if you come across, have you come across State of Play, the book State of Play? That sort of lays the groundwork for it. There's a lot more in there beyond that, but that's the best place to start. And from a European perspective, there's very little in this area. There are some people in Germany are looking at it, but it's not it's an unopened. Yes.
Forgive me, I believe there are also state of play conferences. I think the New York Bar Association.
Yeah, it's the New York Law School. Yeah, New York. Yeah, state of play. And if you are interested in law and virtual worlds, then occasionally there are state of play conferences. There's been, I think, 5 or 6 so far, but they're sort of running out of steam because people are now going over the same issues that they went over before. And also the organiser got appointed as Barack Obama's head of think of interesting things to do technologically with law. So it's actually quite good. She's put up a database of patent claims. So if somebody applies for a patent, then it goes in the database and you can look at it and say, well, no way should that get a patent, and you can comment on it. So there are some useful things that are coming out of it, but because of that, she isn't running state of play. So there are other things you can do there. And it is a good area to be looking at. I'd also say, if you, this is a general point, the Council of Europe, who are in charge of the human rights in Europe, are very interested in having some games written for human rights. So you play a game and as a result, you know something about human rights you didn't know before. and they've got a budget of €0 for this. However, if the games are good, then they'd be very willing to stamp their names on it. So perhaps that's something you might want to think of, because saying you've worked on a game for the Council of Europe probably might help somebody. So you can't do it at Essex University. Our students are, well, the good ones aren't as numerous as you. Let's put it that way.
Okay, next year we'll have a game with Sam.
Okay, well, if you get in touch with me, I'll give you the name of the guy at the Council of Europe. Is there any more questions? Yes?
You've spoken a lot about game designers, and literature and film have these cults of personalities where there's like James Cameron and Dan Brown. How important is that to games? Can there ever be a thing?
Personally, I think it's very important. There are people in the games industry who don't like the auteur theory. They think that if you've got a game that 200 people have worked on, then they should all get credit, and yes, the producer might, and the executive producer get all one. But personally, I would argue for the designer, the lead designer, to be regarded as the auteur, the person in charge, and simply because if I say to you, what's a Sid Meier game like? You know what a Sid Meier's game is like. If I say to you, who designed this? You say, well, that was a Will Wright game. Even if you didn't know that Will Wright had done it, because you could tell. They've got an oeuvre. Peter Molyneux games. I don't actually like Peter Molyneux games because they're all good and evil, controlling people below. It's kind of almost a theological thing. It's Judaism, Judaistic basis on it. And each game he's got is more sophisticated, working through this notion of, do you do good, do you do bad? If you're in charge, how would you control the people? And you can tell that it's a game that he's got his hands all over. So of course it would have to be the designer. Now what annoys me is that many designers aren't actually any good at designing. They're designers in that they hold the job title designer, but they aren't actually any good at design. They don't know why they're doing things. They don't know that they've got choices. They've got nothing to say in the design. If you're designing a game or something, the reason you're designing that game, rather than writing a book, writing a screenplay, or anything else you could do, is because games are your medium. You are articulating yourself through that game. Somebody comes up to you and says, what's this game about? You can say, well, it's a game about freedom. What do you mean it's about freedom? Well, it's a game that shows you, play the game. If you play the game, then you'll understand what I'm trying to say through it. If you can't say that, then you might have a game that's kind of fun, but it's not a game with any soul. But if you can say that, then surely the person who designed it, who was trying to say something through the design, should get the credit for it, because that's what's happened. Like in movies, you'd think that perhaps the screenplay writer should be the auteur, but the way the movies work is that there are so many screenplays come out, 30,000 screenplays every year are lodged with the American
Writers Guild?
Guild, the Writers Guild, that the way it works is that directors look through these and pick one that matches their vision, and then that gets converted. So it works like that. The director has a vision of what they kind of want, and they look through for the screenplays that will match and then pick them. So although the screenplay author was trying to say something, it gets made into the movie because the director chose that one, and the director chose the cinematographer, and the director chose the casting director, and all the other people who, even though they have their own art themselves, they're all picked to fit the overall structure. Now you could argue that computer games were like that, and that whoever appointed the director, I want to say administrative, but that really doesn't sound good at all. It is more creative than that if you're a producer. But from my point of view, as a designer, I think the designer should be getting the credit for computer games. It works with board games. You buy any of the German board games, they've all got names on the front. And you would go and buy a game because it's got a name on the front of somebody whose games you liked before. So even though it's not exactly egalitarian to say that some people are actually better at game design than other people, and it doesn't really fit like socialist principles, nevertheless, some people are better at game design than other people. Just like some people are better at running, some people are better at typing, some people are better at writing novels. Everybody's got their own strengths and weaknesses, and some people really are better at designing games than even groups of people. So I'm keeping you all from your whatever you will be doing. Is there anything else? Or is that? We can always catch me afterwards.